Shabbat Shalom. I need a little help. I'm confused. Well, moderately confused. It's not nothing tragic. Do we have any baseball fans in the room? So can you explain to me this torpedo bat? The torpedo bat. Apparently not everybody knows about this. Good, so I'm not the only one. Phew. All right, so who wants to give me the torpedo bat breakdown? Explain it to a layman. Yeah. They put the bat sweet spot where the batter sweet spot is. And Betty bought a bit of butter, and if Betty bought a bit of butter, where's the bit of butter that Betty bought? All right, okay, so hold on. I said layman's terms. Okay, what do we mean when we say that there's a sweet spot on the bat? What are we doing here? Right, that's what I've seen from the pictures, is that most of us, at least my life, have played with baseball bats that have the old handle down here. I guess I could have done that with my paper. And then it gets a little bit wider, and then it carries on parallel the entire way. Right? It is sort of a cylinder all the way up the bat, and then the top gets rounded off and you're done. And you swing the ball, you hit the ball, yay. Well, it seems that what this innovation was that near the top of the bat, they tapered it. Rather than going straight up all the way, they tapered it. Now, the overall dimensions of the bat are relatively unchanged except for that shift. And from what I understand, what that does is by removing material at the top, it puts more of the mass, the center of mass, closer to the part where you're actually supposed to hit the ball. Because if you hit the ball at the tip, the ball tends to do weird things like foul ball and all of that. But what you're trying to do is hit the ball a few inches down from the tip. By shaving off that extra material up, you're putting more of the center of the weight of the bat near that spot where the ball is going to hit. When the ball hits that, there you will have more of an impact on the ball and the ball goes flying. That's the theory, at least. All right? Okay. Does it work? Well, but this wasn't corking. This wasn't corking. Corking is completely modifying the bat, and that's against the law, or against the rules in Major League Baseball. The bat does have to be made of solid wood. So that is still unchanged. They just sanded the tip down a little bit. Well, yes? They got 9 home runs last weekend. Unprecedented 9 home runs in one game, right? And everyone's like, torpedo bat, my savior. I mean, it's going to become a little bit like golf clubs, I imagine, where you have various fads to try and modify the implement in order to increase average. I mean, it's that or getting better. And at least in Major League Baseball, these people are mostly at the top of their game, so what else do you have left except changing the equipment? But this last weekend, that 9 home run run got a lot of attention, because if someone like me, who doesn't follow baseball, I think it's a fun game to play, boring game to watch, if someone like me has heard about this torpedo bat, then you better believe it's gotten a lot of attention, because it filtered through into my own news feeds. But it's not a new idea. I mean, first of all, the bat itself has been around at least for a couple years. But secondly, putting the mass where you want to strike, yeah, we call that a hammer. That is like engineering 101 for building tools. If you go back into the Paleolithic period, you saw that our ancestors knew that you attach the rock at the end of the stick, not the middle of the stick, not the handle of the stick. You attached it where you thought you were going to hit. And you might even shape it a little bit so that when it hit, it concentrated that force precisely on that point. Now, it's a little harder to do that with a stone implement or even with, war hammers and picks from the Middle Ages, because you've got to swing that thing around in all sorts of crazy ways if you're actually using it in combat. But baseball bats, come on, guys. You only swing them in one direction. You're swinging them basically in the same rough arc every single time, and you've only got to swing it what, 6 times? Maybe at maximum, maybe a few more times per chance at bat if you happen to hit a whole bunch of foul balls. So why hasn't this been developed before? Well, people are often trapped by convention. It's been well established and data proven that the best way to make your free throws in basketball is with the granny shot. So called because they want to humiliate players who use it. But shooting like this is absolutely canonically proven by data to be the easiest way to get the ball in the basket if no one else is trying to stop you, which is what a free throw is. You get a free throw. So why not actually use the best way? Because other people will make fun of you. And so you limit yourself to a suboptimal solution. Well, baseball had been limiting themselves. Perhaps it looks to a suboptimal solution. And now, because of, well, the Yankees doing it, it has helped break that ice, quite literally, and maybe we'll see more players being willing to experiment, maybe not only with the shape of the bat, but maybe also with batting technique. They could learn a lot from cricket players, for example, who have to deal with much more complicated batting situations. Again, great sport to play, terrible sport to watch. But what does this torpedo bat have to do with Judaism? I can hear yourself asking. Or some of you are thinking, my God, thankfully he's not talking about Judaism. We're talking about something like baseball. Well, here's where the gear shift comes. We need a torpedo bat. Right? As Judaism, we need a torpedo bat. See, we've got the data that Judaism works. We've got a whole 3,000 years worth of history that Judaism actually helps human flourishing considerably, both in the micro sense, that is to say, the individual or the individual family does better when involved within a Jewish context and using Jewish values and Jewish practices and Jewish ideas about how one should behave. We've got 3,000 years that says not only is this resilient and enduring, that speaks for itself by 3,000 years, but it produces good results of overall happiness within those communities. Israel, even under her current conditions, ranks very high on the Human Happiness Index for the world, just recently released. And we also know that it creates a more fair and equitable society when it is implemented. But no one's running out to buy the Jewish bat. No one's running out to support these Jewish ideas. Why? Well, we haven't had a good weekend in a while. We got a good weekend a long time ago. We're going to celebrate it next weekend. It's called Pesach. That was pretty darn impressive. A lot of home runs during that celebration. 10 at least, plus a whole bunch more, and you can calculate that even higher if you pay attention to your Haggadah. But since then, what outstanding moments have we had to attract attention? Well, there have been some. Sure, we got through the Babylonian exile, yay. We got through Purim, we got through Hanukkah, and those are impressive in their way. But let's be honest, those are not demonstrating the flourishing of life. It is merely demonstrating the endurance of life. To actually see the flourishing, you got to zoom in on the details. Or more importantly, you have to actually care about the individual people rather than just the broad list of dates and kings and events that normally passes for a discussion of history. But if you go in and examine the life of the average Israelite compared to the life of the average Canaanite, the life of the average Israelite compared to the life of the average Roman citizen, the life of the average Jew compared to the life of the average citizen of medieval Europe or medieval Islamic empires, you know, we're batting a whole lot better than all of those other communities. But it doesn't stand out. And this is a deep frustration, because what we should be looking for is consistent return on investment. What we should be looking for is, does this work all the time? The Wonder Bat has not been hitting 9 home runs every weekend since it was invented a few years ago. If it were, we would have heard about it by now. This was a lucky chance, and probability curves work like that. You get outliers where things just happen to be really, really good events grouping up very, very close to each other, and it becomes very intense for us, and we can see it easily. But honestly, that's not how we're meant to judge the results. Those of you who are here in the medical practice know that you don't judge the effectiveness of a new medicine or treatment simply because I had 5 people out of 50,000 that had miraculous results. I mean, that's something good and you want to pursue it and investigate more, but you're not going to say this is the wonder drug just because you had a great weekend. Likewise, if you drive down the roads and you see all of those signs saying, such and such lawyer got me $5 million, well, first of all, those results are not typical. And second of all, those results came because there were $5 million worth of suffering that went into that situation. Hardly the equivalent of a lottery, no matter how many smiles they put up on the billboard. And of course, most of us who are ever looking at the stock market, don't do it right now, please. Not just because it's not Shabbat, but you also won't be happy. Know that long-term profitability should be our goal, unless we are planning to cash out tomorrow as some sort of day trader, which if you want to do that, great. You can also buy my blackjack method, and you'll have about the same amount of luck. And yes, your individual results may vary, and no matter how good you may think you are at it, you're only good at it because there were 30 other people who failed, and in the course of time, it averages out. Judaism has a good average. We have a strong average, and yet we don't get attention for what we have done. Or when we do get attention, we get blamed. How dare you still be alive? How dare you be successful despite the anti-Semitism and discrimination against you? You must be cheating. The very fact of your success is evidence of your duplicity. It is really the damned if you do, damned if you don't problem, because if we don't succeed within society and life, then we are condemned for being lazy, ignorant, and corrupt individuals. So how do we change that? Well, first of all, by actually following Judaism. You got to make sure that we're still swinging hard at every moment we're at bat. You got to make sure that you are still using Judaism as your batting technique. See how far I can push this metaphor. You got to make sure that Judaism still sits centrally in your life. And then, not only do you need to pay attention to the differences it makes in resolving disputes with a spouse or with a friend, or how it helps you to guide yourself to a more ethical form of business, or how it guides you to work for a more equitable society, but you also have to tout those successes. Now, this is hard for us. Most of us are not prone to bragging about Judaism. We've got 2,000 years of history that tells you to keep your head down, that tells you, you know, it's kind of better if the powers that be don't notice that we're here. Don't notice that we're doing okay. Well, right now, the world needs to hear the wisdom that we've got. We need to take our wonder bat and say, look, we've got something that can hit home runs, guys. We've got something that fits the modern world, that doesn't ask you to check your rationality at the door, doesn't ask you to believe only in miracles rather than human effort, doesn't ask you to throw millions of people under the bus as not being relevant for God's love or your care. We've got something that works. And look, there's an example. Oh, look, there's another example. Oh, you think that's a good value? Yeah, that was originally Jewish. And we've shared that with the world. And no, I'm not trying to convert you. I'm not trying to make somebody who isn't Jewish want to be Jewish, but trying to make sure they understand that there is a coherent way of looking at the world that actually addresses most of the world problems that we are now facing. And that's something that's our responsibility for all of us. Because right now a lot of people are scared, a lot of people are confused, and a lot of people are desperate for some solution to the problems they are facing. And when people are scared, confused, and desperate, they're going to make bad choices. Ask anybody who's on their third mortgage in Vegas at 2 a.m. and they decide to bet it all on black. Bad decision. Bad decision. Judaism has ways to help people make better decisions. And we have an obligation to share what God has shared with us. It is not just for us to hunker down, to hide within our bunker, to just keep safe with our head down and don't let anyone know that there is a better way because God forbid they pay attention to us. We have to let people know there are better ways to look at this. And without even being Jewish, you can look at the world through a Jewish lens. That without even being Jewish, you can be inspired by the teachings of Torah, of Mishnah, of Talmud, of the rabbinic wisdom of 3,000 years. And that wisdom is more relevant and more needed now than it has been for a very long time. So take your swing at bat. Let people know the ideals of Judaism. You don't have to proselytize, but you do have to preach about what is right and what is wrong. You do have to stand up for what Judaism says. You're not always going to hit a home run, but if you don't take a swing, well, then we're all out. Shabbat Shalom.